Hey guys, tonight we sink into the quiet, bureaucratic heartbeat of Imperial China. You're not galloping into battle on horseback or meditating in a mountaintop temple. Nope. Tonight, you're walking slowly, perhaps a little reluctantly, through the broad, tiled corridors of the Tang Dynasty's central ministry. Your shoes make the faintest pattering echo over polished stone. Red lacquer columns stretch above you, holding up a roof designed not for glory, but for paperwork. This is the empire at its most meticulous. And you are now one of its many pencil pushers. Except, you don't have a pencil. Not even close. You've got a brush, some ink, a long robe that drags on the floor every time you try to look important, and a desk assignment you had to bribe someone mildly to get. Welcome to your first day as a mid-level clerk in the Tang Civil Service. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I always love seeing those comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the Ministry of Rights just as the morning sun slices through the lattice windows. Golden light dusts over hundreds of neat little desks, each with their own peculiar personality, some pristine, others hoarding ink stains like battlefield scars. Yours is in the second row from the back, near a crooked potted plant that smells faintly like forgotten plums. The air smells of sandalwood and bureaucracy. Nearby, someone sneezes with remarkable politeness. You nod, unsure whether you're supposed to say, "Bless you," or file a report. As you approach your assigned workspace, a supervisor with very pointy eyebrows motions to a folded paper tag that reads your name, neatly brushed in the flowing, upright style favored by the capital's calligraphy school. This is it, the desk. Your desk. Now, if you imagine this would be some elegant, Zen-inspired writing table from a historical drama, I'm sorry to disappoint. It's a blocky contraption made of sturdy pine, lacquered to an aggressive shine, and just the right height to guarantee years of lower back issues. A sort of poor man's prestige item. Its surface is smooth but slightly sticky, like it never truly dried after its last layer of lacquer. The edges are chipped. Someone tried to carve their initials in one corner, only to be stopped halfway. Probably demoted to canal inventory duty. You make a mental note. Don't personalize anything unless you're willing to swim with scrolls. On top of the desk, a basic setup. A flat inkstone, already dusted with the residue of someone else's midnight scribbles. A square paperweight shaped like a tortoise, its shell worn to a smooth shine. A thin, warped bamboo ruler, and a pale porcelain brush holder with two lone brushes propped upright like sentries. You place your hands gently on the surface. It's oddly warm, as though it holds the memory of everyone who sat here before you. The desk, you suspect, knows things. About taxes, about harvest records, about that very suspicious rice shipment from last spring. And this isn't just any old slab of furniture. It's the linchpin of your working life. You will eat here, write here, whisper gossip here. You will unroll scrolls, make endless copies, correct the copies, then copy the corrections. And if you're very lucky, just so incredibly fortunate, you might one day get promoted to a slightly larger desk, one with two drawers instead of one. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To your left, a fellow clerk clears his throat and raises a brow in your direction. He's older, with a mustache so fine it practically whistles when he exhales. "Watch the front left leg," he whispers, nodding at your desk. "Bit wobbly. That's where they hid the sugar plums last year." You glance down and give the desk a cautious nudge. Sure enough, there's a subtle wobble, a quiet rebellion against the otherwise controlled chaos of Tang administration. You mentally classify this as your first diplomatic challenge. And yet, as you sit down on the low wooden stool, feet awkwardly tucked beneath the broad robes of officialdom, there's a strange comfort in it all. The scent of ink, the quiet rustle of silk sleeves, the soft ticking of someone's abacus across the room, like a lazy metronome keeping time in a world where everything moves slowly, but relentlessly. You take in your surroundings. No clocks, no phones, just rows and rows of equally overworked scholars and clerks, all bound together by brush, ink, and imperial mandate. Historians still argue whether these workspaces were more collaborative than competitive, but you can already feel the strange mix of tension and camaraderie, like you're all in an endless, ink-stained rowing boat. From the corner, an administrator calls roll. You respond when your name is barked, second to last, of course, and immediately realize you've forgotten your seal stamp. A rookie mistake. You'll have to borrow one or fake it until lunch. The desk creaks. You place your blank scroll onto the surface, gently weighing it with the tortoise paperweight. The first blot of ink pools like a tiny lake, and as your brush descends for the first stroke, you feel it. You're no longer just sitting at a desk. You're entering the quiet ritual of Tang-era desk work, where form is function, and where every ink drop holds the weight of the empire. You dip the brush again, trying to find that rhythm, wrist loose, elbow hovering awkwardly, spine stiff in a way that probably shortens your lifespan by a decade. The brush moves with all the elegance of a startled goose at first. But you'll get better. Probably. Hopefully. Your first real task arrives in the form of a crisp scroll plopped onto your desk by a minor superior whose name you instantly forget. The scroll contains a list of updated grain tax quotas from Sichuan province. Riveting stuff. Your job. Copy it, twice, and send one version to the records office and one to the deputy grain oversight clerk, third hall. You blink. There are at least 7 words in that sentence you don't fully understand yet. Still, you begin. Now, let's take a moment to truly appreciate this desk, your noble wooden steed of paperwork. It's not merely a slab of pine. It's a design rooted in centuries of Confucian ideals about order, function, and hierarchy. Tang Dynasty desks, especially those issued by the ministry, were generally standardized to reflect a clear sense of bureaucratic equality. Well, equality within your tier, anyway. Don't think you'll get the minister's dragon-inlaid table any time soon. Most desks were made of pine or catalpa, lacquered in reddish-brown or deep black, with straight lines and minimal ornamentation. The surface area was broad enough to unroll at least one full scroll across it, and the drawers, if you were blessed enough to have drawers, were designed for easy stacking of documents, not for hoarding snacks. Though, of course, everyone hoarded snacks anyway. There was often a raised edge, just a centimeter high, running along the back and sides of the desk. That wasn't for aesthetic flair, it was to stop things from rolling off and being lost forever to the floor demons. Brushes, ink sticks, seals, rings, paperweights, if it could roll, it would roll. This little lip saved many a career and possibly 1 or 2 minor uprisings. Beneath the desk, a modest shelf allowed for the storage of bulkier scrolls or ledgers, often tied in bundles with silk cords dyed with rank-indicating colors. Pale blue for logistics, red for judicial matters, and a sort of sad mustard for miscellaneous. Your first bundle is mustard. Naturally. You notice someone 2 desks over using a small folding stand to prop up their scroll as they write, keeping the paper elevated like a fainting noblewoman. That's a personal item, not standard issue. A luxury. A flex, honestly. Historians still argue whether these flourishes were signs of quiet rebellion or just better posture. The desk in front of you has a tiny chip missing from the front right corner. Upon closer inspection, it's shaped like a rabbit. You wonder if that was deliberate. Some board official quietly carving lunar animals between reports. The Tang bureaucracy was full of these little mysteries. Even the desks told stories if you stared long enough. As you try to ignore the rabbit and return to your calligraphy, your hand begins to cramp. No one tells you that bureaucracy is just artisanal muscle pain in fancy robes. But there's a rhythm to the script, eventually. The slant of each character, the pause after each line. You imagine yourself from above, just one of dozens of clerks, all brushing in quiet harmony, like monks of the mundane. Midway through your copy of the grain quotas, a tiny bead of ink splashes onto the edge of your robe. You stare at it like it's a personal betrayal. No one says anything, but you're pretty sure 3 people saw. That's fine. You'll wear it like a badge of early career incompetence. Suddenly, the supervisor walks past, inspecting desks with the speed and suspicion of a cat near a glass. His eyes flit over your work. He pauses. You hold your breath. Brush stroke too dry, he mutters, then keeps walking. You look at your inkstone. It's fine. Perfectly moist. He just wanted to say something. A joke floats across the room, softly. Better a dry brush than a dry career, someone says, and a ripple of chuckles follows. The humor in this office is extremely subtle, aged like a nice vinegar. You begin to understand that even the jokes are bureaucratic. Just then, a messenger boy trips over a scroll case someone left on the floor. It clatters. Several heads rise, then sink again. The boy scrambles to recover a stack of folded documents and disappears with the embarrassed efficiency of someone who's done this before. Your desk doesn't even twitch. A brief moment of stillness returns. You roll your wrist gently, stretch your fingers under the table. That's when you notice the faintest inscription carved beneath the desk lip. You run your fingers across it. 3 characters. Wu Yong Ren. Useless person. Someone left that as a warning, or a confession, or maybe just a joke for the next poor soul at this desk. You smile. Somehow, this makes it feel even more like yours. By mid-morning, the light has shifted. The sun warms the lacquer to a soft gleam. Your hand is steadier now. The copy is nearly done. Your brush moves with the confidence of someone who knows, with certainty, that they'll be required to redo it anyway. And when you finally place the second scroll into the outbox tray, a beautifully simple wooden platform shared by 4 desks, you allow yourself a small moment of bureaucratic pride. You have survived your first set of tax quotas. You have wrangled a wobbly desk, tamed a too-dry brush, and decoded 3 layers of social nuance from a supervisor's sigh. You are now, undeniably, a part of the machine. Lunch doesn't arrive so much as it drifts in, an ambient shift in the room's energy, like the temperature dropping a single degree. A whisper of relief passes from desk to desk as workers begin to quietly set down their brushes, as if summoned by an invisible gong. You, too, unroll your neck and stretch your legs. It turns out, sitting like a Confucian scholar for hours is excellent for your moral fiber and absolutely brutal on your knees. The food itself? Not thrilling, but safe. A lacquered tray appears, carried by a teenaged assistant with the glazed-over look of someone who's memorized too many walking routes. It's a standard ration: rice, pickled mustard greens, a modest wedge of tofu, and if you're lucky, a single dried plum with more pit than fruit. Gourmet. Not quite. But calming. Somehow, yes. You retreat to the small courtyard just beyond the south hallway. A few low benches surround a koi pond, so still it looks painted. The bureaucrats here take lunch like they take governance, quietly, orderly, and with suspiciously perfect posture. A clerk beside you, older, with a long gray mustache like upside-down cattail reeds, sips his soup and squints at the clouds. "North wind," he says, and offers no further explanation. You nod solemnly. You have no idea what it means, but it feels like the kind of thing you should agree with. The courtyard is where whispers live. Someone is recounting an argument over paper allowances. Another grumbles that the vinegar supplier raised prices again. There's even a rumor, spoken just above breath level, that someone in the Judicial Review Bureau was caught napping. In his inkstone, face down, twice. You return to your desk 30 minutes later, soul mildly soothed by warm rice and koi watching. A small slip of bamboo paper has appeared in your inbox, this one folded sharply and marked with red wax. Your first internal memo. The excitement is underwhelming, but dignified. This memo is not for copying. It's a communication from another clerk in Section 3, requesting clarification about a character you wrote on the grain quota scrolls. Apparently, your yen character looked suspiciously like yen. One means strict, the other means swallow, like the bird. You've accidentally rebranded the entire tax policy as avian. Oops. You compose a reply, slowly, and try not to choke on your pride. You also consider taping a small sign to your desk that says "Not a bird enthusiast." But you don't. You let the joke live only in your head, where it belongs. Desk organization becomes even more important as the day stretches into its quieter, dustier phase. The afternoon light casts a golden tint across the lacquer, and you notice everyone's desk is arranged just so. There's a hierarchy to it. In the top left corner, a heavy jade paperweight, sometimes shaped like a turtle, sometimes just a rough cube. It holds scrolls in place when windows are opened, and symbolically holds chaos at bay. You find this comforting. To the right, inkstone, always with its companion water dropper shaped like a gourd. Some dropper gourds are decorated with painted cranes or fish, though yours is plain. You grow oddly fond of it. You may name it later. Center, the day's main scroll, unrolled no more than halfway at once. A brush rack sits behind it. Most hold 2 to 5 brushes, arranged by size. You currently have one, and it's definitely from the shared supply drawer. The bristles are already showing signs of existential doubt. Right-hand corner, a sand pot for blotting. Yes, actual sand. You pinch a little and scatter it gently on wet ink. The ritual is calming, even if you'll be sneezing granules for the next hour. Historians still argue whether these sand pots were more practical or symbolic, a nod to impermanence, perhaps, or just a fancy excuse to spill something gracefully. Below the main writing surface, you slide out the underdesk tray to retrieve your logbook. It's a humble ledger for noting completed tasks and dates sent. Some clerks personalize theirs with flourishes or little doodles. Yours is still blank, like a new diary that knows too much already. Just as you're returning the logbook, a loud crack breaks the silence. A desk leg somewhere behind you has given up, collapsed like a court eunuch on wine day. A murmur ripples through the room, but no one turns fully. That would be uncivil. You glance over casually and spot the scene, a young official on the floor, surrounded by gently sliding scrolls and what might be half a steamed bun. He tries to recover both dignity and plum sauce. It doesn't go well. One of the senior clerks remarks, dryly, "Too much Confucian weight, not enough joinery." The room chuckles again, the soft approval of shared workplace pain. By late afternoon, the sun leans lazily through the lattice windows. Your desk now smells faintly of pine, ink, and something else, something warm, almost leathery. You realize it's the brush handle, worn slightly smoother by use. It's becoming your brush, even if you're still on character probation for accidentally invoking birds. Another scroll arrives, this one with a simple assignment. Duplicate a map of canal repair works outside Luoyang. It's part geography, part bureaucratic poetry. Terms like sluice clearance and mud redirection curl delicately across the parchment. You study the original, tracing your fingers over the faint blue lines. It's oddly beautiful. A river becomes a sentence. A bend in the canal hints at someone's decades-old decision to save 3 farms and anger 4 nobles. You begin your copy slowly, the fine brush offering little forgiveness. The rivers stretch like veins across an old palm, and your brush must follow them precisely. One slip, and you've accidentally irrigated a magistrate's chicken coop. As the sun slips further, the desks become silhouettes. Candles are lit. A gentle wave of orange light glows across the room like a sunrise in reverse. You can hear the faint tapping of someone adjusting their brush rack, the clink of ceramic inkwells being closed. And there you are at your desk, copying canals and memorizing the rhythm of Tang order. Brush, stroke, lift, breathe. You're not exactly changing history, but you are recording its plumbing, be why the time evening creeps through the cracks of the office shutters. Your body has settled into the gentle ache of repetitive labor, part stiffness, part a strange sense of accomplishment, like you've contributed to the empire's ongoing effort not to flood its own rice fields. There's no formal bell, but you know the day is winding down when someone starts folding up their scrolls with theatrical care. It's always the same guy, slightly too enthusiastic about being the first to leave. His desk looks like it's auditioning for a minimalist's dream. No ink stains, no spare brushes, not even a rogue rice grain. Suspicious. You're not quite done. There's one more task, a ledger entry you're supposed to transcribe for the archives. It's from a report on grain taxes in a rural province with a name you can barely pronounce, something like Jiezhou, though everyone here mumbles it as that wheat place with the sheep problem. As you work, the copy room becomes quieter still. The pages you're reading describe not just numbers, but glimpses of faraway lives. A local official who imposed rice quotas during a barley shortage, another who tried to bribe his way out of a millet audit. Historians still argue whether these reports were exaggerated for political gain or simply proof that nothing good comes from mixing sheep, wheat, and underpaid scribes. One entry mentions a woman named Zhou Chunhua, a widow who offered ink and brush to traveling clerks in exchange for leniency on her land dues. She reportedly made the best fermented bean paste in 3 counties. You pause a moment to imagine her, sleeves rolled, arguing interest rates over soup bowls. She probably organized her pantry better than you've organized your entire career. Finishing the entry, you tap your fingers on the edge of the desk, not quite ready to pack up. There's something calming about the slow rhythm of the place now. The scratch of brushes. The occasional creak of wooden floorboards that were definitely never even to begin with. You take a moment to adjust your desktop arrangement. The jade weight shifts slightly to the left. You realign your inkstone, clean your brush with a few patient swishes, then nestle it in the rack like a sleeping pet. Someone sneezes 3 desks over. There's a polite silence. No one says, "Bless you." Instead, a clerk offers a tissue square of mulberry paper, folded 3 times. This is the bureaucratic equivalent of screaming, "Are you okay?" with a hug. Before long, you're called to the records cabinet, a low, dusty tower of pigeonholes, each labeled in beautifully illegible calligraphy. The drawers stick slightly, because of course they do. This entire structure appears to predate the dynasty itself. You're retrieving a reference scroll from the transportation logs. It's dated the 14th year of Xuanzong's reign and wrapped in green silk ribbon. You tug it gently. It resists. You tug again, and the scroll, with great theatrical reluctance, slides free, trailing a puff of dust that might contain your ancestors. The document is surprisingly poetic for a toll report. It details how ox-drawn carts carrying silk bolts had to be rerouted because a tea merchant's goat caravan broke a bridge. A clerk had to improvise signage using his lunch tray and a sharp stick. That stick is now framed in the office's small museum corner, near the water bucket and forgotten umbrellas. Scholars still debate whether the clerk exaggerated the goat incident to mask delays in shipping. Others argue the goat was framed entirely. Either way, the bridge was never the same. You return the scroll, gingerly, reverently, like you're tucking in a fussy old uncle. Then you do the evening sweep, checking that your inkstone is dry, your papers are stacked, and your brush is not accidentally nibbling a sheet out of boredom. Before you leave, you do what every proper Tang bureaucrat must: seal your day's work with a personal stamp. Yours is a modest red seal carved with 2 characters, part of your family name and a poetic flourish you chose from a list. It means something like gentle dusk, though one co-worker swears it also means lazy afternoon. You can't quite refute it. You press it into the cinnabar paste, then onto the bottom of your ledger. A soft pop as it lifts. There. Official. Final. Permanent, or at least until the mice eat the archives. As you exit the building, the halls are already dim. Oil lamps flicker against carved panels. The doors groan shut behind you, their wood swollen slightly from last week's rain. Outside, the air smells like damp earth and distant bean curd. You walk slowly toward the clerk's dormitory, passing the stone wall where notices are posted. One is new, a small slip noting that the Grand Secretariat is reducing paper rations next week. You sigh. The eternal dance between ink and austerity. At the dorm, you slide the door open and settle in. Your bedding is a thin mat and a thicker silence. You can hear someone a few rooms down practicing their poetry recital. It's not bad. A little nasal. You roll onto your back, stare at the wood-beam ceiling, and wonder whether you'll ever get a better brush. Probably not. But maybe you'll earn a second one. Someday. The next morning, the sun hasn't yet breached the tiled rooftops when you're jolted from sleep by the sound of someone loudly overboiling millet porridge. It's always too early, and the porridge is always too ambitious. You sit up slowly, neck stiff from the bamboo pillow, legs reluctant. The dormitory is already humming with life, or at least a low-level bureaucratic shuffle. Somewhere down the corridor, someone's reciting yesterday's court bulletin aloud, dramatically, like it's a poem. You suspect he wants a promotion. After a rinse with cold water from the communal basin and a half-hearted attempt at smoothing your robe, you head to the office again, past the courtyard fig tree, where a flock of pigeons is holding what appears to be a deeply bureaucratic argument. You arrive early today, mostly to rearrange your desktop for maximum perceived efficiency. See, desk layout isn't just practical, it's political. In the Tang Dynasty, officials were ranked by merit, of course, but also by the elegance of their brush racks. Your desk is mid-tier. Not austere like the senior clerks, whose desks scream, "I've been copying imperial decrees since Empress Wu ruled," but not chaotic like the junior interns, who once spilled ink into the tax codex. At the center of your desk sits the standard inkstone, rectangular, slate gray, with a slight crack that gives it character, you tell yourself. You pour a few drops of water into the shallow pool and begin grinding the ink stick in a slow, circular motion. There's a kind of rhythm to it, the same rhythm every bureaucrat knows. Circle, pause, breathe, circle. You line up today's documents along the upper edge of the desk. Your brush rack holds 2 reliable companions, both soft-tipped, both gently fraying at the edges. Their handles are polished smooth from years of worry fidgeting. On the far corner of the desk is your paperweight, an iron figurine shaped like a turtle. Rumor has it that it once belonged to an official who claimed he could balance ledgers just by touching them. Historians still debate whether he was a genius or just spectacularly lucky with grain prices. And then there's your tea. Lukewarm already. Everyone drinks tea, bitter, grassy, just enough to keep you upright. Your cup is chipped, which you secretly like. You think it makes you look philosophical. Today's task is annotation, reviewing and marginally improving someone else's summary of rice logistics in Sichuan province. Improving means spotting grammar mistakes and pointing out how someone accidentally claimed ducks can pull wagons. They cannot. As you read, you spot a margin note written in crimson ink, likely from a supervisor. It says, "Clarity lacking in this sentence." The sentence in question reads, "Rice went from there to here." You sigh. Fair point. Your corrections must be made with a specific brush, one with a red-dyed tip. Everyone calls it the brush of doom, even though it just smells faintly of hawthorn. You dip it and carefully begin to correct the passage, your strokes neat, deliberate, sleepily precise. A colleague strolls past and mutters, "Annotation duty? May the gods give you finger strength." You grunt back a sleepy affirmation. Outside the office window, the faint sounds of a distant festival float through the air. Someone's playing a flute. The melody is pleasant, meandering, but you're not fooled. You know this is the time of year when junior scribes beg for desk transfers with heartfelt haikus. One of them recently submitted a poem comparing his desk to a rice paddy, dry, cracked, and infested with frogs. He now copies toll receipts in the warehouse. You shift your stack of bamboo slips, older reports that haven't yet been translated into scrolls. One of them documents the layout of desks in a regional magistrate's office. The drawings are crude, but fascinating. There's a diagram showing how one particularly organized official placed his brush rack exactly 9 cun, roughly 3 inches, from the edge of the desk. You try this yourself. It feels slightly more balanced. Or maybe you've just tricked your brain into thinking you're more centered. Historians still argue whether these minute desk arrangements were rooted in feng shui or pure administrative superstition. Probably both. As the sun rises, light spills over your papers, casting long shadows from the paperweight turtle. You take a moment to tidy the corner where you stack discarded slips. One of them is stained, either from soy sauce or archival despair. There's a brief interruption when a superior walks through, hands tucked in sleeves, eyes half-lidded, inspecting desks like an emperor reviewing battle formations. His glance lingers on yours. You nod imperceptibly. He nods back. It is the most emotionally intense moment of your week. Then, he pauses at your neighbor's desk, where a document is askew by at least 2 degrees. You feel the atmosphere shift, like someone moved a tea leaf in the wrong direction during a fortune reading. Nothing is said, but the tension hovers, heavy as a bowl of undercooked dumplings. When the official finally exits, the room exhales. One scribe mutters, and thus concludes the inspection of doom. Everyone chuckles softly, respectfully, with the kind of laughter that's 85% survival instinct. You return to your annotations. The scrolls await. The day stretches on, each hour marked not by clocks, but by the slowing pace of brush strokes and the occasional yawn-sneeze combo from the intern. As noon approaches, you shift in your seat, readjust your brush rack one more time, and allow yourself a single long blink. You're still blinking, possibly asleep with your eyes open, when the lunch gong echoes faintly from the eastern tower, a dull, melodic clang that vibrates the ink jars. It's not that you're especially hungry, It's more that your brain is beginning to run in circles, and lunch means temporary freedom from the tyranny of scrolls. But before you leave your desk, there's protocol. You must cover your current document with a sheet of cloth, one stained with ancient tea spots and the faint imprint of a careless ink blot. It's less about protecting the paper and more about showing the gods of paperwork that you respect the sanctity of unfinished rice distribution records. You walk in a quiet column with your fellow officials down the corridor, robes swishing gently, sandals whispering against polished stone. The canteen is a sprawling courtyard enclosed by open colonnades, shaded by silk awnings. It smells like pickled radish and yesterday's boiled eggs. There's a designated seating arrangement, of course. You sit according to rank, though everyone tries to pretend it's random. You're midway up the bureaucratic ladder, which means you get the spot near the mulberry tree. Not bad, but too close to the gossip bench. As you unpack your lacquered lunchbox, you take a moment to assess your portion of steamed millet, 2 salted plums, and an aggressively chewy fish cake. You trade glances with your neighbor, who got a lotus bun. He raises his eyebrows smugly. You stare at your fish cake, wondering if it's judging you. Mainstream historical records describe the Tang Dynasty as a golden age of culture, poetry, and economic brilliance, which is mostly true. But what they don't mention often is the hierarchy of condiments. Soy sauce packets, rare and revered, were hoarded like treasure. The vinegar sachet? A status symbol. And don't even ask about the dried mushroom garnish. That was for officials who edited imperial poetry, not grain charts. You eat slowly, chewing in rhythm with the wind rustling through the paper lanterns above. Across the courtyard, someone is describing a new desk ornament they acquired, a miniature bronze horse that also functions as a letter opener. It's wildly impractical, and you want one. Your attention drifts to a conversation behind you, where 2 junior clerks are debating whether sitting near the mulberry tree improves test performance. One of them claims that the tree whispers answers during the civil service exam. The other insists that's just early onset heatstroke. Historians still argue whether such beliefs were part of actual Tang metaphysics or just a coping mechanism for exam-induced despair. After lunch, there's the ritual of tea refilling. You carry your cup, a chipped, loyal companion, to the hot water urn and fill it with a fresh brew of oolong leaves, which float lazily like tiny boats of wakefulness. Back at your desk, it's time for scroll straightening, a task that sounds trivial but can reveal deep character flaws. You unfurl a dozen reports laid out on the table, each of them curled like a snail at rest. With smooth, practiced movements, you press the corners down with tiny carved weights, each shaped like mythical creatures: a dragon, a phoenix, a startled carp. One scroll contains budget estimates for repairing rural bridges. The handwriting is elegant, suspiciously elegant. Too elegant, in fact. You suspect someone paid a calligrapher to ghostwrite their reports again. You make a mental note to add a passive-aggressive annotation later. Meanwhile, a fly lands on your inkstone and just stands there. You consider naming him. He seems like a Lin. Lin the fly. As you resume reviewing a passage about rice imports to Chang'an, you spot a marginal symbol that looks like a miniature turtle. It's not an official mark. Someone's added it in jest. You recognize the tiny tail flourish. It's from the intern. You sigh, but leave it. The scroll needed a little humor. Outside the window, the wind has picked up. Paper rustles faintly in every direction. A gust sends one unfinished form fluttering to the floor, and a collective gasp moves through the office, because the only worse fate than miscopying a report is having to recatalog one from memory. You retrieve it. The turtle paperweight is reinstated as punishment. Somewhere nearby, A senior clerk sneezes 3 times in succession and mutters something about dust demons. Everyone chuckles. The Tang bureaucracy is a palace of rituals, but it's also a village of superstition. Remember the ink brush of doom? There's also the stapler ghost, a loose hinge in the supply drawer that clicks mysteriously at night. It's probably a rat, but no one wants to test that theory. Your quill resumes its dance. Stroke by stroke, you clean up a sentence about grain taxation ratios, adjusting passive verbs into something slightly more active, if not more interesting. And yet, there's peace in the monotony, a kind of meditative trance, where your breathing matches the rhythm of paper turns and the occasional distant clang of a temple bell. You stretch. Your back cracks audibly. Someone 2 desks away gives a thumbs up in sympathy. You return the gesture. This is bonding, Tang style. As the afternoon drifts on, so does your mind. You begin imagining alternate careers. Perhaps you could become an ink artisan, traveling from town to town selling handcrafted ink sticks with poetic inscriptions. Or a paperweight carver, famous for turtle designs with philosophical engravings. A rogue thought suggests, what if you just built the perfect desk layout and retired in glory? You nod. That's the dream. Forget poetry or war strategy. Here, perfection is the alignment of brush, blotting cloth, and teacup in such serenity that the emperor himself would weep. You gently realign the brush rack by a few millimeters, then sit back and let your eyes close just for a second. You jolt awake approximately 3 minutes later with a tiny snort and a light spasm in your neck. Miraculously, no one seems to have noticed. Or they're too polite to say. Either way, you slide back into your upright position and pretend to examine a scroll with intense scholarly interest, as though you've just discovered a discrepancy in the barley ledger. The afternoon light slants through the windows at a soft angle now, casting golden stripes across the floor. This is the warmest part of the day, when even the ink seems to sweat. If you don't keep your brush upright, it will start to lean in its holder like it's tipsy from fermented tofu. This is also the time of day when small talk becomes more dangerous. At the desk beside you, 2 mid-level clerks begin a hushed debate about which official has the nicest calligraphy. The wrong answer can create generational grudges. You stay silent and focus on your own brushstrokes, moderately elegant, slightly crooked, and proudly legible. Your current task is transcribing population tallies from rural provinces. These aren't just numbers, they're delicately phrased counts of mouths to feed, hands available for corvée labor, and persons of scholarly promise. That last one always makes you pause. Who decided? Was it based on exam scores or just good posture? You adjust your posture accordingly, just in case anyone is watching. Historically, the Tang census records are considered marvels of bureaucratic sophistication, painstakingly detailed and surprisingly accurate for the 8th century. But what's less often noted is the occasional creative flair. One census taker in the Western Territories once annotated his tallies with poetic asides like, "Village of 17 dwellings and one unusually chatty goat." No one censored him. They just moved him to fisheries. Your desk at this hour becomes a stage for tiny rituals. You turn your inkstone clockwise 3 degrees, not because it matters, but because it feels like control. You uncap the document seal and breathe in the faint scent of lacquer and wax. There's something weirdly comforting about office supplies with ancient lineage. Your neighbor sneezes. You both nod solemnly, acknowledging that sneezes after midday are statistically more contagious, according to an old wives' tale no one's willing to verify. You return to your scroll, where a provincial official named Zhao has made his numbers look suspiciously rounded. You frown. Historians still argue whether some of these anomalies were honest estimates, deliberate exaggerations, or just the result of abacus fatigue. To cope, you start doodling a tiny boat in the margin of your own notes, a tradition among overworked clerks that dates back generations. The rule is, one boat per frustrating scroll. You're currently at 6 boats and a questionable duck. Just then, the office door creaks open. A senior scribe shuffles in holding a fresh batch of dispatches from the imperial court, tied in red ribbon and humming with stress. Everyone collectively pretends not to notice. The dispatches are distributed like ceremonial incense sticks, each one carrying the scent of extra work. Yours contains a request to cross-reference shipping logs from 3 years ago. It's the clerical equivalent of being asked to count every grain of sand in your shoe. Still, you open the archive drawer. The drawer handle, shaped like a snarling lion, sticks slightly as always. Inside are dozens of tightly rolled records, stored in wooden tubes labeled with elegantly faded ink. You select the year and port in question, then carry it reverently back to your desk like a relic. As you open the scroll, a puff of stale air escapes. It smells like antique mildew and failed dreams. But the handwriting is gorgeous, almost sculptural. Some long-gone official clearly believed in the poetry of shipping weights. You trace a line with your finger, 20 bolts of silk to Luoyang, 7 crates of tea to Fuzhou, a suspiciously high number of jade combs sent inland. You raise an eyebrow. Somebody had a very fancy head. There's a rumor floating around that jade combs were often used as bribes, subtly passed from hand to hand in the court's more shadowy corridors. You make no accusations, but you do sketch a tiny crown next to the jade entry, just for your own amusement. This is how time moves in the bureaucracy, slowly, in elegant loops. Scrolls follow scrolls, and every now and then, you feel the thrill of catching a copyist's error from decades past. You once found a weight listed in horse hooves instead of standard units. You still tell that story at banquets. Outside, a low gong signals the final hour of work. You stretch, again, and flex your ink-stained fingers. The brush holder wobbles ominously, as if it too is ready to go home. But there's one more thing to do. Finalize your desk for inspection. It's not an official policy, but peer judgment is swift and unrelenting. You realign your ink brushes by height, fluff the blotting cloth, and refold your tea napkin into the shape of a chrysanthemum. Well, something approximating one. More like a tired daisy. You glance at your paperweights. The dragon is crooked. You adjust him slightly, feeling a brief, ridiculous sense of pride. Because yes, there's something noble in this quiet, slow labor. Something enduring. Future historians may not remember your name, but they'll read your notes. Or at least squint at them with some suspicion. You finish by stacking your scrolls just slightly off-center, a signature quirk. It makes your desk look lived in, which you tell yourself is a valid aesthetic. The day's final sunlight paints a soft glow across the tabletop, illuminating every ink smudge like a badge of honor. And tomorrow you'll be back, chasing perfection one brushstroke at a time. The last hours of the day are always a strange mixture of exhaustion and calm. It's almost like the office is breathing with you, tired, slightly disoriented, but still functioning on a schedule that doesn't care about your individual needs. The ink dries on the last scroll with a soft, satisfying hiss, and you know that soon the office will empty and the tasks will return to their rightful owners, the clerks who actually care about the politics of grain. But for now, there's time to reflect on the work you've done. You take a slow, deliberate breath. The room hums with quiet chatter as colleagues finish up their own notes, but no one speaks. In Tang bureaucracy, words are cheap, but precision is the gold standard. You stretch your arms, feeling the tightness in your shoulders from hours of hunching over endless reports and calculations. A clerk at the next desk gives a half-hearted yawn. You return the gesture, stretching just a little longer. Time, as always, seems to drag its feet. The senior officials are still somewhere deep in the archives, looking for something that might or might not exist. You envy their ability to work late without blinking an eye. A distant gong rings, marking the official closing of the office. No one stands immediately, as the ritual of tidying up is sacred. There's a moment, however small, to collect your thoughts, clear your desk, and leave with the satisfaction of a day's work well done, even if nobody's going to read the reports for at least a week. You delicately remove your brush, careful not to disturb the fragile ink stains on the surface of the scroll. You tilt your head and squint, inspecting the brush fibers. Perfect! Another day of high-level desk maintenance completed. Ready to go? The voice breaks the silence. It's your desk neighbor, an elderly clerk who never forgets to offer a polite invitation to leave at the exact moment the sun sets behind the eastern tower. He, too, seems tired, but not quite ready to leave. It's the kind of tired that sticks to you like ink stains. You nod and begin to roll up your scrolls, making sure to align the ends perfectly. You'll file them tomorrow. There's a soft, pleasant weight in your hands as you gather the papers, your accomplishments now neatly packed away in the wooden tube. It's almost like putting a day of your life in a box. You head for the door, passing rows of neat desks and silently packed scrolls. The whole office is slowly transitioning from productive to contemplative, like the final few seconds before the flicker of a candle goes out. There's something beautiful in this daily process, a routine that's been lived for centuries, in countless variations. But here, in the Tang Dynasty, it feels as timeless as the ink under your fingernails. As you step into the courtyard, the last remnants of sunlight paint the sky in pale pinks and muted oranges. The lanterns flicker to life overhead, and the bustling of your colleagues outside fades into a gentle hum. The day has ended, and tomorrow, the cycle will begin again. The path to your quarters is quiet, save for the distant murmur of chatter and the occasional scurrying of a cat hunting something unseen. You pass the tea shop, where the evening workers are already brewing their nightly pot of jasmine. A smile tugs at your lips as the familiar scent of herbs and boiled water wafts through the air. As you walk, your mind starts to wander. In the quiet dusk of this ancient city, the world seems far away, as if the city itself is holding its breath. Your pace slows, matching the slow drag of your thoughts. You're not yet tired, but there's a heavy comfort in the slowness of everything around you. The sky darkens as you round the corner to your quarters, and for the first time today, you let go of the tension in your shoulders. The stone walls of your room are cool, the lanterns casting soft shadows across the floor. You set your scrolls down on the small desk in the corner and take a seat, letting your fingers brush against the intricate carvings on the edge of your chair. Everything has its place here, your brushes, your ink, your papers, all arranged in the same neat, efficient way as the desk you just left behind. But for now, it's time to unwind. You unlace your sandals and stretch out on the woven mat, gazing up at the simple wooden beams above you. There's something meditative about the silence of your room, the only sound being the soft clicking of the wooden window blinds as the night breeze moves through them. Tomorrow will bring more scrolls, more records, more tedious but necessary work. But tonight, for now, you are content. The office feels like a distant memory, a world removed from the quiet serenity of your room. You close your eyes, imagining the cool silence of the office, the clinking of inkstones, and the soft rustle of paper, all flowing together in a quiet symphony. Somewhere, in the back of your mind, you make a mental note to adjust the angle of your inkstone tomorrow, just a little. But for now, it's time to rest. The gentle hum of the evening fills the room, and you let your thoughts drift. Like an unhurried scroll, night stretches on quietly, as your mind drifts between the rhythms of the office and the peaceful solitude of your room. The lanterns outside flicker as the wind picks up, but within your quarters, everything is still. The world beyond feels like a distant dream, and in the cool calm of the night, it's easy to forget the rush and buzz of the Tang bureaucracy. The next morning, however, promises a return to the familiar, the gentle grind of scrolls and reports, ink and brush. You stretch slowly, working the kinks out of your tired body. The momentary peace of the evening slips away like the last whispers of a forgotten dream, but you let it go, stepping into the ritual of the day. You begin with the same small gestures that always accompany the start of your workday, the gentle creak of your desk as you sit, the familiar scraping of your chair as you push it forward, the soft hum of the early morning air that still carries traces of last night's coolness. The process of preparing your workspace feels like a sacred dance. You select your tools with care, running your fingers over the familiar contours of the brush handles, the soft texture of the inkstone, the smoothness of the parchment. Each element has its place, each object an instrument in a symphony of orderly labor. It's a routine that helps ground you in the day ahead, but also one that connects you to something larger. The centuries of scholars, scribes, and officials who have sat at desks just like this, transcribing records, copying poems, and filing decrees. They too have felt the pull of that quiet, solitary work. There's comfort in that thought, knowing that even in the solitude of your small office, you are part of a long line of record keepers. The brush is ready. The inkstone is prepared. You begin your first task of the day, a simple letter to a provincial governor. The words come easily. They flow as if they were meant to be written. There's a quiet satisfaction in the act of writing, in transferring thoughts and ideas from your mind onto paper. It's a moment of clarity before the day fully begins, before the rush of reports and figures arrives. You take a moment to look out the window as you finish the letter. The world is waking up. Farmers leaving their homes, officials walking briskly toward the main hall, merchants setting up their stalls. The city of Chang'an, in its constant ebb and flow, mirrors the quiet rhythm of your workday. It's a city that never truly sleeps, yet in this quiet room, you can almost forget the outside world. The balance between the two is one of the things that makes Tang Dynasty life so strikingly peaceful and yet intensely complex. The letter is complete, the seal affixed. You stretch again, letting the gentle burn of your back remind you that you've been sitting for far too long. The sun is beginning to rise higher in the sky, casting a brighter glow across the room. Time, like the ink in your brush, moves steadily forward, and you know that soon another set of tasks will arrive. But not yet. For a few moments you let yourself drift. The brush is set down, and the scrolls are neatly stacked. You take a moment to appreciate the stillness before the workday swarms back into focus. Outside, a bird chirps, and the sound fills the space, like a reminder that, despite the labor ahead, there is still beauty in simplicity. Just as you begin to gather your thoughts, you hear footsteps approaching. The chief scribe enters the room, holding a fresh stack of documents. You rise, ready to begin again, but not without a sense of quiet satisfaction. You've met the beginning of your day with calm, and in doing so, have set the tone for whatever tasks come next. The world of Tang bureaucracy is, after all, a world that moves in rhythm. The ink flows, the scrolls roll, and the officials come and go, just like the tides. But there is a beauty in that rhythm, a sense of purpose and precision that ties everything together. And in the midst of it all, you sit at your desk, brushing away the dust of yesterday's tasks, ready to begin again. The gentle clink of your brush against the inkstone becomes a rhythmic sound, almost hypnotic. It's the kind of noise that can drown out the bustling city beyond your office walls, the distant calls of street vendors, and the occasional clatter of hooves on the stone streets. Here, in this quiet corner, you are completely insulated from the chaos that exists outside. For now, it's just you, the desk, and your thoughts, grounded in the stillness of early morning work. As you dip the brush into the inky blackness, you marvel, if only briefly, at how easily this daily task becomes second nature. It's the same motion repeated again and again. Lift the brush, dip it in the ink, pause to ensure the right amount is absorbed, and then bring it down with precision. In that brief instant, as you position the brush over your work, there's a strange calm. You could be anywhere, anytime, but you are here at this desk, participating in a timeless ritual. This is the work of the Tang Dynasty's finest bureaucrats. Their desks were far from places of chaos. Instead, they were temples of order, each tool, each movement, each stroke carefully calculated. The brush, poised between your fingers, represents far more than just the act of writing. It's a symbol of a system that has been honed to perfection over generations. As you write, the stroke of the brush is fluid, each movement following the one before, not a single one out of place. The ink flows from the bristles, leaving behind a series of sharp, deliberate characters that are almost like a dance. Every motion has meaning, every pause has purpose. The very act of writing becomes an embodiment of efficiency. The task at hand, a simple administrative decree for a local district, might seem small, but the weight of responsibility is not lost on you. Every letter, every character, could hold the fate of an individual, a family, or a district in its very shape. It's a lot to carry, especially on a day like this, when the sunlight is just beginning to cast long shadows across the floor, signaling that the day is getting older. Despite the weight of it all, the atmosphere in the room remains serene. There's a rhythm to your writing, almost as if time itself has slowed down to match the calm of your movements. The slight tension in your shoulders slowly eases as the brush moves from one character to the next. Outside, the city begins to stir with more energy. There's a buzz of life outside your office door, but inside, the world moves at your pace. Historians often argue whether this kind of administrative work was the true engine of Tang prosperity. Some say it was the thriving trade routes that brought wealth into the empire, while others insist it was the well-organized bureaucracy that allowed for efficient governance. Whatever the case, it's clear that in the lives of bureaucrats like you, the desk was not just a place to work, it was a space where decisions were made, where history was written. The idea of a perfectly organized desk in Tang China may sound quaint to modern ears. After all, our desks are scattered with papers, notes, gadgets, and distractions. But for a Tang Dynasty bureaucrat, each paper had its place. Every brush stroke followed a pattern. Every inkstone had a designated corner. Even the most minor detail had to be aligned just right. As you finish another page, you pause, pushing your hair back and surveying the neat rows of completed documents. It's a satisfying sight, the steady progress of a day spent in quiet productivity. You allow yourself a brief moment to enjoy the serenity, the sense of control that comes from perfect organization. There's a certain beauty in the simplicity of it all, ink flowing smoothly across paper, the satisfaction of completed tasks, the slow, deliberate movement of a skilled hand. This moment, this ritual, will be repeated countless times today, but for now, it feels almost sacred. Time is moving, yes, but in this moment, you feel like you are in harmony with it. Just as you prepare to move on to your next task, a breeze drifts through the open window, ruffling the edges of the papers on your desk. You watch as one of the scrolls slips slightly out of alignment, and for a moment, it feels like a tiny disruption in the perfect order you've worked so hard to establish. But as quickly as it happens, you smooth the scroll back into position, restoring the calm. Outside, The sun has reached its peak. The market sounds grow louder, and the distant hum of voices fills the courtyard outside the office. But here, you remain untouched by the chaos. The world is still in its own way, governed by the slow, deliberate movements of your work. Tomorrow, you will return to this very desk, perhaps with new scrolls, new tasks, but the cycle will remain the same. You will take up your brush, dip it in ink, and continue to write. And with each stroke, you will continue the dance of history, one deliberate, perfectly timed movement after another. The day stretches on in a gentle rhythm, like the steady brushstrokes of your pen across the scrolls. With every line you write, the familiar sense of calm and order settles more deeply in the room. Outside, the hustle and bustle of Chang'an streets carries on with its usual pace. Carriages rumble, merchants call out their wares, and the occasional clink of coins can be heard from the market. But within your quiet office, time seems to stretch just a little longer, lingering in the quiet pauses between each stroke of your brush. By now, the task at hand has become familiar. Another report, another memo, another decision to be recorded in the annals of Tang bureaucracy. The work is often tedious, yes, but there's a strange comfort in its predictability. You've grown accustomed to the ritual, the way the brush glides across the paper, the feeling of ink soaking into the parchment. Every action, every step is instinctual now. It's like a second nature, a dance between you and the desk, the ink, the scroll. You know where every piece of paper belongs, every inkstone is carefully placed, every document stacked neatly to the side. But what of the ones who came before you? The ones who sat at desks just like yours, performing these same tasks, yet with their own personal touches? The desks of the Tang bureaucrats were places of order, but they were also spaces of individuality, shaped by the preferences of the men and women who inhabited them. Some officials preferred a particular brand of ink, others used brushes of different sizes depending on their mood. Some would arrange their desk items in very particular ways, scrolls to the left, inkstone to the right, and brush always within easy reach. Others, those of a more poetic nature, might have had delicate flowers arranged in a vase nearby to inspire their work. And then there were those who sought to bring a sense of balance to their workspace, carefully organizing their items according to principles of feng shui, the ancient Chinese practice of arranging objects in harmony with the natural flow of energy. According to this practice, the desk wasn't just a place for work, it was a space where one's energy could be focused and maximized. Your brush movements, your posture, the arrangement of your scrolls, all were seen as extensions of your personal energy and, ultimately, your success. In the grand scheme of things, your desk is just one small piece of the much larger puzzle of Tang governance. The records you write, the reports you file, the decrees you issue, they all feed into the complex machine of the empire, which, at its peak, ruled over vast swaths of Asia, controlling everything from the Silk Roads to the Central Asian steppes. Bureaucracy in Tang China wasn't just an administrative necessity, it was the lifeblood of the empire, keeping everything from the smallest village to the capital itself running smoothly. Historians still argue whether the level of bureaucracy in Tang China was too much for a society of its size. Some believe that it was the sheer volume of paperwork, the never-ending flow of scrolls, which led to the eventual decline of the dynasty. Others argue that the meticulous attention to detail allowed the Tang to thrive, creating one of the most organized and prosperous empires in history. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. A finely tuned system is certainly an asset, but it can also become unwieldy if it isn't carefully managed. As you finish another report, you pause and take a moment to reflect on how much of this system revolves around the desk, the humble workspace. From the emperor's grand administrative halls down to your own little office, these desks are the foundation of governance. They're places where the fate of the empire is written, one character at a time. It's easy to overlook, But the Tang bureaucrat's desk was more than just a place of work. It was a symbol of the empire's power, a testament to the painstaking attention to detail that made the empire run. It's here, at this desk, that decisions were made that would affect millions of lives. The quiet hum of your brush, the silent flow of ink across the page, these were the sounds of an empire at work, its rhythm ever present, even in the calmest moments. You set the brush down for a moment, letting your hands rest on the desk. The paper before you is nearly full, each word a small part of the larger whole. There's something satisfying in the process, the small, deliberate steps that lead to something larger, something meaningful. The quiet acts of bureaucracy, the daily grind of writing and organizing, may not seem important in the grand scheme of things. But in truth, they are the backbone of the empire. Without them, the Tang Dynasty, like any great civilization, would have crumbled under its own weight. As the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, you sense the day winding down. There's still much to do, of course. The reports are endless, the paperwork unyielding. But in these moments, as you sit at your desk with a warm glow surrounding you, it's easy to feel that you are part of something larger. In your small corner of the world, you're helping maintain the rhythm of the empire. And that, for now, is enough. The evening light filters gently through the paper window, casting soft, almost ethereal shadows across your desk. The day's work has drawn to a close, but there's still a quiet sense of accomplishment in the air. The room, once filled with the sharp clatter of brushes and the soft rustling of parchment, now feels like a peaceful sanctuary. Outside, the sounds of the marketplace are beginning to subside, the calls of vendors growing softer, the noise of carts rolling down the stone streets fading into the distance. For a brief moment, everything feels still, like the calm that follows a heavy rainstorm. You glance down at your desk, taking in the items that have been the steady companions of your work all day. The inkstone sits to the right, its surface polished by years of use. The brush, now set aside, waits patiently for tomorrow's tasks. Each item on the desk is a familiar presence, neatly arranged, carefully positioned, almost as though the space itself has become a reflection of your own mind, quiet and ordered. But even as you prepare to leave for the evening, a flicker of curiosity stirs within you. The desk, it seems, has its own quiet history, one that stretches back far beyond your time. For the Tang bureaucrat, the desk was more than just a place for writing. It was a space for reflection, for thought, for moments of personal connection to the greater system of governance. The tools of the trade, the ink, the brush, the parchment, each had its own role to play in this intricate dance of bureaucracy. One of the most fascinating aspects of Tang-era desk organization was the concept of the junzi, the ideal Confucian gentleman. The junzi was not merely a moral figure. He was someone who embodied order, propriety, and restraint. And it was in the arrangement of his desk that this philosophy came to life. Bureaucrats, as Confucian scholars, believed that the physical space around them reflected their internal world. A disorganized desk was a reflection of a disordered mind, just as a messy, cluttered life was a sign of moral laxity. Historians still debate how much influence Confucianism had on the daily lives of bureaucrats. Some argue that the system of moral principles defined not only the governance structure but also the very spaces in which people worked. Others suggest that while Confucianism played a role, the practical needs of governance often took precedence over philosophical ideals. But regardless of the debate, it's clear that for many Tang officials, their desks were far more than places to work. They were sanctuaries of order and self-discipline. As you gather your papers to leave, you feel a sense of calm wash over you. The day's work has been completed, and while there is more to come tomorrow, there is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that you've played your part in the ongoing rhythm of the empire. The world outside may be chaotic, but within the walls of this office, everything feels contained. The desk, once again, becomes a quiet reflection of your mind, organized, controlled, and serene. You step away from the desk, taking a final look at the neat piles of work before turning to leave. Outside, the last light of the day fades from the sky, replaced by the deep purple of evening. The stars begin to twinkle faintly above, and you know that tomorrow you will return to the same desk, the same tools, the same familiar rhythm. But for now, you are free to rest, knowing that the work is never truly done. It waits for you, ready to begin again with the rise of the sun. As you close the door behind you, you reflect on the strange beauty of your work, how something as simple as the organization of a desk can be a symbol of a much larger world. And tomorrow, as the ink flows once again, you'll pick up where you left off. The desk will be ready, as it always is, waiting for you to continue the quiet dance of bureaucracy. The quiet tranquility of the night settles in. In the distance, the occasional sound of a drum signaling the closing of the city gates drifts through your mind, but in your own space, the stillness is all-encompassing. The room is shrouded in the soft embrace of shadows, the fading light of your lantern flickering gently on the edges of the desk. You step back into the small courtyard, letting the cool night air caress your skin. There is something profoundly soothing about the way the Tang bureaucracy, a sprawling system of intricate decisions and endless reports, exists in such stark contrast to the calm, measured world of the bureaucrat's personal desk. But even as you stand there, taking in the cool breeze, a thought lingers in your mind. What of the emperors, the ones whose decisions you help carry out, whose decrees pass through your hands? The Tang emperors are often remembered for their extraordinary accomplishments, and indeed, many were great scholars and strategists in their own right. The famed Emperor Taizong, for example, was not only a political leader but a lover of the arts, with a particular interest in the written word. His desk, too, would have been meticulously organized, his thoughts and decisions flowing through the same careful order you, too, cultivate in your own workspace. Historians still argue whether the Tang emperor's love for the written word and the systems of bureaucracy they built was driven by their desire for control or by genuine respect for intellectual pursuits. Some argue that the imperial system was a tool for absolute power, a means of centralizing authority across the vast empire. Others suggest that these emperors, particularly those like Taizong, saw their bureaucratic system as a means of fostering stability and prosperity for all their people, driven not by a thirst for control, but by a genuine desire to create a fair and well-organized society. What remains clear, however, is that the Tang rulers understood the power of words, of writing things down, of recording decisions, of putting thoughts into permanent form. Like the brush strokes of a calligrapher, the flow of words could shape the empire. The Tang Dynasty's bureaucratic system was not just a practical tool, but an art form, much like the carefully planned arrangement of the items on your desk. There was an art to everything in Tang China, even in the mundane. The way officials dressed, the way they moved through the halls, the way they interacted with one another, it all had a rhythm, an order. And so too did their desks, with their carefully placed inkstones, brushes, and scrolls. Everything had a place, and this sense of harmony, this sense of balance, was essential to the way the empire functioned. For, at its core, Tang bureaucracy was not just about control. It was about balance, ensuring that every function of the empire, no matter how small, was aligned with the greater whole. The more you think about it, the more you realize that your desk is not just a place for you to work. It is a reflection of your part in a much larger system. It is a space where your small contributions combine with those of countless others, from the emperor himself down to the lowest-ranking clerk. The work you do, the careful organization, the precise movements of your brush, it all fits into the grand design of the empire. And as you look around your peaceful courtyard, the weight of it all feels strangely comforting. It's fascinating, really, how something as personal as a desk can be a microcosm of the entire empire. The desk you sit at every day, organizing reports, responding to decrees, and making decisions, this is the very same desk where the fate of the empire can be shaped. And in your case, your task is small in the grand scheme of things. You're not deciding whether to wage war or how to distribute grain during a famine. But you are part of the process. Your work, though seemingly inconsequential in the moment, adds to the cumulative effect of Tang governance, piece by piece, stroke by stroke, as the night deepens. You begin to feel the weight of the day's work settle within you. The papers are neatly stacked, the brush is clean, and your desk is once again in perfect order. There's a sense of peace in this, in the return to order. You know that tomorrow, when the first light of dawn touches the horizon, you will return to your desk to continue your work. It's a comforting thought. The world may shift and change, the empire may face new challenges, but the rhythm of your desk, the rhythm of bureaucracy, remains constant. The work may never be finished, but in a way, that's part of the beauty of it. It's a constant, ever-turning wheel. It's a dance between you and the empire, a subtle, quiet partnership that continues, day after day, in the most humble of ways. And for now, as you step away from the desk and retire for the night, you can take solace in the thought that you've done your part. Tomorrow the desk will be waiting. The night is serene, but there's a peculiar stillness in the air, almost as though the world around you is holding its breath. As the moon casts its pale glow through the window, you're reminded of how quickly time passes. The rhythm of your work, though seemingly slow, is in fact constant, relentless in its quiet, rhythmic pulse. And this is the life of a Tang bureaucrat, whose days are measured not by hours but by tasks, tasks that flow into one another, creating a continuous, unbroken cycle. But today, you can't help but wonder, how do your actions, your small, personal contributions, fit into the larger workings of the empire? After all, it's not just about the organization of your desk or the careful placement of your inkstone. It's about the weight of history, the sense of purpose that comes with knowing that, in your own quiet way, you are part of something much larger. You might not have the title of emperor, but your work, the seemingly inconsequential work of arranging papers and writing reports, holds its own importance. The Tang bureaucracy was vast, an intricate web of officials and administrators who each had a role to play. At the heart of this system was the idea of the civil service exam, a rigorous test that ensured only the most capable and educated individuals ascended to positions of power. These exams, based on Confucian texts, were designed to create a meritocratic system, one in which individuals could rise based on their intellect and ability, not just their family connections. It's fascinating to think that the process of how a bureaucrat was chosen and how he worked at his desk was so deeply rooted in philosophy and education. Historians still debate how effective these exams were in creating a truly merit-based system. Some argue that, while the exams provided opportunities for talented individuals from humble backgrounds to rise through the ranks, the reality was that the exams were still influenced by family connections, wealth, and status. The wealthy could afford the best tutors, the best education, which often gave them an advantage over the less fortunate. Yet, for all its flaws, the system was undoubtedly a step forward, allowing for a broader pool of talent to govern the empire. As you sit in the quiet of your room, letting the weight of the day's work slowly fade, you can almost imagine what it would have been like for those who sat in similar desks hundreds of years ago, their brushes gliding across paper in the same meticulous manner, their thoughts turning over the same issues. What were their concerns? What did they think about as they organized their workspaces? Were they also contemplating the vastness of the empire, the weight of their responsibility, or were they simply focused on the task at hand, the proper alignment of inkstone, brush, and paper? The quiet sounds of the city drift up to your window once more, and you are reminded of the living, breathing empire outside your door. It is a world in constant motion. Merchants selling their wares, officials moving between meetings, soldiers marching to their posts. Yet, within the stillness of your room, you have the power to control a small corner of this vast, ever-turning world. Your desk, with its careful organization and systematic approach, becomes the focal point of your day, a place where the chaos of the outside world is distilled into something manageable, something predictable. It's fascinating to think that, in a time long past, the men who sat in your seat were doing the very same thing, sitting at their desks, writing, organizing, and thinking. The tools may have been slightly different. Stone tablets replaced by bamboo slips, inkstones replaced by more elaborate brushes, but the act was the same. The desk became their world, a world in which they had some semblance of control, no matter how small their role in the grand scheme of things. In a way, you realize that this connection, the connection between your work, your desk, and the empire, has transcended time. The organization of the desk, the rhythm of the day, the slow, methodical movements, these things are universal. They are what make up the core of the bureaucratic life, and they have endured through centuries. As you rest your eyes and let the day's tasks settle into memory, you begin to understand that this desk, this space, is not just a physical object. It is a part of something larger. It is a space where your own actions, however small, are woven into the intricate tapestry of history. Tomorrow, as the sun rises and the work begins again, you will return to this same desk. It will be waiting for you, ready to be arranged, ready to continue the quiet, measured rhythm of your day. And as you step into the world outside, you will carry with you the knowledge that, no matter how small the task, your work is a part of the ongoing story of the Tang Dynasty, an empire built on order, precision, and, of course, carefully organized desks. The moonlight casts a delicate glow across your desk, a soft light that almost seems to highlight the careful organization of your space. Everything is in its place, and for a moment, the world outside, full of noise, motion, and unpredictability, feels a million miles away. Here, in this space, time moves differently. It's as if the rhythm of your brush strokes, the gentle sweep of the ink across paper, has the power to slow everything down, to make the world outside seem more distant, more bearable. In these final moments of the night, before you drift off into a peaceful sleep, you can't help but reflect on how far the Tang Dynasty's bureaucracy reached. The empire stretched from the vast steppes of Central Asia to the lush jungles of Southeast Asia, a sprawling, ever-expanding world that was meticulously managed, in part, because of the seemingly mundane work carried out in places like your own desk. The work of the bureaucrats, the organization of documents, the management of resources, the careful attention to detail in every task, was the backbone of the empire. But what about the quieter, subtler details of the bureaucratic life? What about those who didn't make the great decisions, who didn't stand on the grand stages of history, but who played their part behind the scenes, as part of the vast network of individuals whose work ensured the empire's smooth functioning? You think about them now, the men and women who, for all their hours spent at their desks, were the unsung heroes of the Tang Dynasty. Their contributions, though often invisible, were as critical as those of the emperors themselves. Historians still debate the importance of these lower-ranking bureaucrats. Some argue that they were mere cogs in the great machine of the empire, their work serving only to support the decisions of those at the top. Others believe that they were the true drivers of the Tang Dynasty's success, with their expertise and diligence creating a foundation that allowed the emperor's grand visions to be realized. Regardless of the argument, it's clear that the work of the bureaucrats was essential to the functioning of the empire, and, in a way, their work lives on, quietly but undeniably, through the careful organization of your own desk. As you lean back, the weight of the day's thoughts begin to drift away, like the soft, ebbing tide of a river. You find yourself lulled into a state of quiet reflection. The brush rests lightly in your hand, and the stillness of your surroundings seeps into your bones. This is your space, your sanctuary, where time slows and the world's worries fade. You realize that, much like the bureaucrats of the Tang Dynasty, you, too, are part of something larger than yourself. Your desk is your domain, your place in the world, and the actions you take here, small and seemingly insignificant as they may be, add up to something meaningful. Tomorrow, when you return to your desk, it will be waiting for you, ready to continue the cycle of organization, decision-making, and reflection. The Empire's pulse will continue to beat in the distance, but here, in this moment, it's just you, your desk, and the quiet serenity of your thoughts. The gentle flicker of your lantern provides a comforting presence, guiding you through the darkness as you slip into sleep. There is something peaceful about this, about knowing that, in your own small way, you are part of a vast and ancient system that has endured for centuries. As you close your eyes, your thoughts begin to soften. The brush is set down for the night, the inkstone rests in its place, and the papers settle into their neat, orderly stacks. You can almost hear the faint rustling of ancient scrolls, the whispers of bureaucrats long gone, their work continuing in the quiet hum of the night. And as you drift off, you are reminded that, despite the vastness of the empire, despite the endless task of managing it, there is always peace to be found in the small, simple moments, the moments spent organizing a desk, placing each item just so, and knowing that, in doing so, you are playing your part in a story that has lasted through the centuries. This small, quiet rhythm is your connection to the past, your place in the ongoing journey of history.